Hey, it's Lara here with your horoscopes for the full moon in Cancer on January 17th, 2022. Thanks for being here. So it's been a hot minute for those of you who follow me regularly. Um, the last time I did a video was in 2021. We had the holidays and it's total chaos with COVID, kids being out of school again. And, there's 5 adult-sized humans living in my house. And so it makes it difficult. And that and other things. Anyways, last time we had the new moon on January 2nd in Capricorn. I wrote the horoscopes out for you and I posted those on Facebook and Instagram. So make sure you follow me there. Because I'm there more regularly. Sometimes it's just easier to write than it is to record a video. And, hopefully once I get my website launched, I don't even want to talk about that, but, I'll be able to post sort of blog style there as well. Anyways, welcome. Enough about all of that jabbering, right? I'm also kind of working old school here, so forgive me for reaching over to turn the camera on and off because my remote's not working. Mercury is stationing as we speak, and today, as I'm recording this, is Wednesday, January 13th. So Mercury is stationing retrograde tomorrow on the 14th of January. Just looking at my calendar here, my almanac, and it is January 14th at 6:14 a.m. and that's Eastern time. So no surprise, went to use the remote for the camera and it wouldn't work today. So we've got Mercury retrograding at 10 degrees in Aquarius conjunct Saturn at 13 degrees. So in close proximity to Saturn, right? Mercury is stationing, so slowing down. And as you may or may not know, when a planet stations retrograde, we really feel the potency of what that's about around the days of the station, right? Around the days that it sort of grinds to a halt before it begins moving in the opposite direction. And it doesn't really move in the opposite direction. It just appears that way from our perspective on Earth. So Mercury retrograde, I won't belabor. Look to the house that Aquarius sits in your chart. This is happening between January 14th and February 3rd. But of course, there's a shadow period on either side there. But that is the crux of the actual retrograde. So look to Aquarius and the house themes, that whatever house Aquarius sits for you speak to. So for me, for example, as a Virgo rising, I have Aquarius in the 6th house. And so, and I'm a Mercury ruled person because Mercury rules Virgo. So, the Mercury retrogrades tend to be felt by people who have Mercury prominent in their chart. And if you have planets, angles, important points in your chart around the degrees. So what's going to happen is Mercury stations at 10 Aquarius, moves back and goes all the way back into Capricorn to the 24-degree Capricorn point. So if you have planets in that area of the chart, right, 10 degrees Aquarius back to 24 Capricorn, give or take a couple on either side there, then you're likely to have a more sort of obvious experience with the Mercury retrograde, right? And the retrograde will speak specifically to, again, the themes that whatever house Aquarius sits for you are. And also, probably by now what Mercury retrograde is good for. It's good for all those words, right? Rethinking, reevaluating, reorganizing, restructuring, reconnecting. You can think of a million words. It's a good time if you've got something some unfinished business to take care of, it's a good time for that. So for me, I am hoping to put the final tweaks on my website. I don't even want to say it. Yeah, anyways, the kids are supposed to go back to school on Monday. We'll see what happens. It's a catch-22. Either way you slice it. So, anyways, that's what my plan is for the Mercury retrograde. So, something, you know, I've already been working on to try to kind of go and fine tune that. So that's a good use of it. So that's Mercury retrograde, which I didn't really intend to spend that much time on, but there you go. What we are going to spend our time on today is the full moon in Cancer on January 17th. And I'm going to spend, you know, our time talking about what that is bringing to the table and how we might experience that. And of course, I'm going to take you through all 12 signs to give you an idea of the areas of your chart where you will be experiencing this, this energy, right? The other things I just want to mention before we get there, of course, we're still doing the Venus retrograde dance right now. And Venus is retrograde in Capricorn. It feels, you know, it seems we're not done with Capricorn yet. We're not done with all the Capricorn stuff that's been going on for the last couple of years. We keep getting opportunities to go back over that area of the chart and those themes, and to learn more and more lessons in the Capricorn area of life. So that's not over yet. Venus is, like I said, doing the dance there and has met up with with Pluto a couple of times already. And then we'll have a third and final conjunction with Pluto in March. You know, and then eventually Venus will move on and move out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. So, and speaking of Aquarius, we've got the sun entering Aquarius on the 19th of January. So if you're an Aquarius sun, happy birthday to you. And the day before that happens, the nodes of the moon are changing signs. So we are having a shift from the eclipses in Sagittarius and Gemini into full-on Taurus Scorpio eclipses, right? So we did have a Taurus eclipse, a solar eclipse. Sorry, not, let me think here. I'm just looking at, I can't remember the date of the Taurus eclipse, and I don't have it on this particular calendar that I'm looking at. But the thing about that was it kind of gave us a little bit of an idea, a notion as to what these eclipses are triggering for each of us, right? But the nodes hadn't changed signs yet. So that wasn't sort of the full experience. So beginning on January 18th, the nodes shift into Taurus Scorpio, and wherever the nodes go, that's where the eclipses happen. And so for the next 18 months, we are in that territory of Taurus Scorpio axis eclipses, right? And we're going to have the next eclipses there are not until the spring. So April 30th and May 16th, respectively. We've got a lot of time before then. I'll talk to you about that as we get closer, but just take note. You know, I said this when I was writing something on social media. It might have been when I was writing the horoscopes for the Capricorn new moon that just happened. But, you know, take note of what's happening sort of collectively speaking, or maybe personally for you, because, you know, if you're somebody that has a lot of energy in Taurus Scorpio in your chart, you know, you might feel this personally. But, you know, I said the phrase I used was like a shift in the zeitgeist, right? So the collective sort of energy, if you will. You take note of what's going on around that time when the nodes change signs. So enough about that. We're going to move. I'm a little rusty because I haven't been on camera in a hot minute here, so forgive me. But I just thought I'd show my face and say, yes, I'm still here. Lots going on as always, but I wanted to let you know, that I'm still here. I'm still here for you, and I hope to be here in some capacity moving forward. So let's talk about this full moon. I'm going to show you the chart. Here's another Mercury retro story for you here. My printer is running out of ink, which I realized when I printed this out. But anyway, here's the chart. And of course, I neglect to mention this looks flipped to you because I'm doing this on my phone camera. It's the easiest way for me to do it. I have fancy cameras, but honestly, I just find it's a bit of a pain in the butt. And if I'm going to get this done, this right now is the best way to do it for me. So anyway, I want to point out to you that here is the sun at 27 degrees of Capricorn, conjunct Pluto, like within a degree. And there's Venus retrograde in Capricorn too. And down here we have the moon, lonely by herself at 27 degrees of Cancer, right? So that's the full moon. That's what's going on with the full moon. The sun and the moon opposite each other in the sky, like at all full moons. But the sun is right smack dab bumping up against Pluto in this case. And therefore, exactly opposing the moon as well. So I wanted to, those are the things I really wanted to point out to you on the chart. We also have Venus. Yeah, this is what I wanted to mention to you. Okay, well, I'm going to take the chart away here. I'm looking at my notes. So this full moon, right? All full moons are points of culmination, of release, of something bearing fruit, of something, of this sort of like a fever pitch crisis, potentially moment in the cycle, right? Of emotional catharsis, potentially. We've got Pluto involved here. So, so that this one is no exception, right? It's a full moon. So naturally those themes come up. Oftentimes full moons are relational because the sun and the moon are opposite each other. They are facing off, if you will, right? And it's this relational aspect where there's a need to kind of compromise, to bring those things together. It can be a bit of push and pull and that sort of energy that goes on. Oppositions are of the nature of Saturn. And so there can be a bit of tension. There can be a bit of restriction that goes on, a bit of pushing boundaries or being met with that kind of a somberness, a seriousness. Saturn is a sign associated with, among other things, maturity, right? And a full moon moment is a point of maturity in the cycle where we're at that point of ripeness, where things are as aged, so to speak, if you're thinking of like wine or cheese or what have you, as they're going to get. So that's what's happening. So sometimes we have, there's this sense at a full moon of a bit of like us and the other, whatever the other is, right? This push and pull. There can be a release of sorts, and sometimes that comes through our interactions with other people. So, but what I wanted to say to you, so I started to say full moons are culminations. So this is a culmination of what, like on some level, of what began a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Capricorn, right, on January 2nd. So that was 2 weeks ago. Think back 2 weeks. What got off the ground? What was kind of tweaking back then? Maybe what were your intentions? You know, what sort of new experience came into your awareness around that time? And now, 2 weeks later, the moon is reaching fullness. The sun's in Capricorn. The moon is in Cancer. What's coming to pass now in relation to whatever that was 2 weeks ago, right? But moreover, 6 months ago, we had a new moon in Cancer on July 9th, specifically July 9th, 2021. And at that time, Venus and Mars were conjunct in Leo, and they were opposite Saturn and square Uranus. Okay, so think back to 6 months ago and what was happening at that time for you, right? What got off the ground then? What was conceived of? What seeds did you plant? Or what sort of, I'm really careful these days to point out, like, you know, we're in this kind of, we have this idea, and I'm guilty of it too, that when we're talking about new moons in particular, it's a time of like initiating our intentions, right? Planting those seeds of intention. And yes, that is true. But even if we don't do that, there is that energy playing out anyways, because sometimes it's kind of like, you know, the universe that's planting those seeds of intention for us. And of course, if the new moon is particularly speaking to your chart, right, then we tend to have a more personal experience with it. But my point is like, just because, like, if you're thinking back, say 6 months back to the early July, like I said, July 9th, when the new moon happened in Cancer, and you're thinking back and going, well, I didn't intentionally start anything back then. You know, I didn't plant seeds of intention, or I didn't initiate anything, you know, that you can consciously like think, remember. Something still happened. Something new was still, you know, being initiated, whether you were consciously aware of it or not. So that's how that works. And I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out, you know. So if you think back to what was going on for you at that time and what began specifically in relation to the themes, you know, Cancerian themes, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and the themes of the chart of the house that Cancer sits in for you in your chart, right? So like, if Cancer sits in your second house, it would be, you know, the topics of the second house are things like your personal resources, your finances, your material possessions, you know, to your values kind of thing. If Cancer sits in the fourth house, it would be about family, home, roots, real estate, you know, these kinds of things. So that's what I'm getting at. So whatever house Cancer sits for you, those are the themes where this new experience was initiated. Okay. And now 6 months later, at the full moon, in the same area of the chart, in the same sign, we get a culmination point of whatever that was, right? So Cancer, let's talk about Cancer for a little bit. Cancer is a feminine cardinal water sign, right? And when I say feminine, I'm not talking specifically about you know, gender. I'm talking about the qualities of the feminine, right? We can use the word yin, maybe that's preferable. Cancer is a yin cardinal water sign. The cardinal signs are initiators, instigators. They start things, right? They have that energy of like impulsiveness. Or they can be inspired as well. So Cancer is this cardinal sign, and it's a water sign, and the water signs deal with you know, our feelings, our emotions, the liminal spaces. They are very sensitive, each in their own way, right? Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio. So there's that element coming into play here. So if you put those things together, Cancer as, you know, a yin cardinal water sign. So Cancer initiates, that's the cardinal energy there. Emotional, which is Cancer, water. Familial is very Cancerian. You know, like bonds. And it does that through acts of caring, really, or nurturing. So Cancer is the great mother. Cancer is the womb. Cancer is the home and the homeland. Cancer is the sign of the crab, right? And if you think about that, I often find it helpful to think about that. You know, as I'm contemplating Cancer and the qualities of Cancer, because if you think about the crab, a crab is obviously, you know, an aquatic creature, and it has a hard shell, so a tough exterior, and a soft, squishy inside, right? Cancer's kind of like that. There can be this real protective energy, this mama bear energy, right? So Cancer tends to protect the people that it considers its tribe, its family. Cancer is also very protective of its own emotions, because it's so sensitive. And so there's that tough exterior there, but it's really kind of, you know, the softy on the inside. And Cancer, when threatened, or the crab when threatened, will either skitter off and go hide in the hidey hole, right? The home. Cancers aren't like, they tend to really be homebodies, and they like to have the people. So my youngest sister is a Cancer sun. Truthfully, I don't know her chart. It just seems ridiculous, right? But we've never sat down and looked at it and looked like with her birth time and stuff like that. So I don't know her rising sign. I have some guesses, but I don't know it. But she is a Cancer sun, and she's a real estate agent. So there's that home family, right, kind of situation. And she is the keeper of the family connections, really. My other sister too, but the sister's like, there's always people at the house, always entertaining, always, and has a huge group of friends that are very much like family to her. So anyways, you know, there's that, like, she embodies in many ways that Cancerian energy. So, you know, likes to be at home, but likes to have people around, likes to entertain, likes to feed people, those sorts of things. That's very Cancer, right? So I was saying, you know, Cancer, it likes, you know, if threatened, will kind of retreat into the hidey hole, or if not really given a choice, or feel like they don't have a choice, then the pinchers can come out, right? And so there can be that element as well, especially if they are hurt emotionally. Then Cancer can be really, can lash out because, you know, somebody kind of touched that soft, squishy inside, so to speak. So Cancers are emotionally nurturing. There is this sense of like the familial, like I said, it's very connected to home, family, tribe, homeland. And the moon, where we have this full moon happening, is at home in Cancer, right? And so this is an extra moony full moon. It's an extra, you know, Cancerian sort of energy at this full moon. And So it's very likely that on some level, this will involve our sense of emotional security, and safety and protection. It will involve perhaps themes of nurturing and mothering, or that sort of, whoever sort of like that notion of like the nurturing parent, regardless of if it's, the mom, the dad, or whomever. Um, a, a sense of, you know, our physical place of living, our home, our family, our tribe. Um, these are all themes that are likely to come up, and it may be quite emotional. And, I say that not only because it's a Cancerian full moon, but because we've got the involvement of Pluto here, right? Pluto is opposing this full moon, like I was saying. So it's really interesting. Yesterday, well, I watched it over 2 days. If you ever watch Chris Brennan's or listen to Chris Brennan's astrology podcast, which is a wealth of information, I happen to subscribe to his Patreon. So I get early access to the recordings, right? And so he has recently interviewed the famous Richard Tarnas, who wrote the book Cosmos and Psyche. And he is, oh, this man, he's a profound scholar. And I could listen to him talk for days. So anyway, Chris Brennan interviewed Richard Tarnas on the planet Pluto. They also touched on a lot of other themes. It was a fascinating conversation, and it'll be released soon to the public. So if you're not on his Patreon, you'll get access to it too. And I really encourage you to watch it. So this was the last in a series that Chris Brennan has done with various astrologers on the planets, and he chose Richard Tarnas for Pluto, and it was just so fitting. So, if I had thought, I would have, grabbed my Cosmos and Psyche off the shelf and brought it in here to read you Richard Tarnas's significations of Pluto. I have done that before in other videos, but it really gets to the heart of the matter. But what I want to say is that, Pluto intensifies, it magnifies, it it really kind of, it blows up whatever it touches, right? Not in a Uranian way, not like Uranus. Pluto was discovered at the time of that the atomic, like, of the first atomic bomb. So there is that atomic energy, that massively powerful energy that is Pluto, right? And so we've got Pluto involved here with this full moon in conjunction, like close conjunction with the sun. And so if you see people with this in their charts, they have this energy of being quite magnetic and powerful. There's a sense of power about this, right? It is, the Sun-Pluto combination can be very dramatic, very magnetic, very profound, very intense. There is this, when I was thinking about this, I get this sense of like powerful kings and queens, right? Like people in positions of power. And I keep thinking about the Prince Andrew scandal, that's going on right now. And if we're gonna, there was some news where, I can't remember the details, but he's not off the hook. Let's put it that way. So we can see, like, on a mundane, on a world level, we can see intense events around leaders and authority figures. And it's in this opposition to the moon in Cancer, that sense of protection and home and nurturing and emotional security, and homeland, and these kinds of things. So we can see power dynamics going on with Sun Pluto. We can see self-destructiveness. We can see fears and phobias and obsessions, right? But also, it's not all bad. This can be like about profound insights and big influence. It can be about getting to the bottom of things. It can be about unveiling mysteries, right? And secrets revealed. This can bring about a profound experience with like self-knowledge as well with Sun Pluto. So whatever's going on at the time, like when I speak to each sign, I'm going to talk about the axis this is happening on for you, because when we have a full moon, it's about this interplay between the sun and the moon that's going on, right? The sun is across the sky from the moon, and the moon, who gives off no actual light of its own, it just reflects the light of the sun, is in full reflection mode at the time of a full moon, right? So it's like showing us things that we don't normally see, which is why full moons can bring about, the revelations. That's a good word. And I think it's a good word when we're talking about the involvement of Pluto here too. There can be some profound revelations that go on around this time, I think. Definitely. So, I think it's important, like I wasn't going to do this, but I decided I'm going to. I want to talk to you about Capricorn a little, even though I did that when we talked about, like when I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago at the new moon, but I didn't get to speak to it. And so, and there's a couple things I didn't really, I couldn't go on and on and on just writing on Facebook and Instagram. So I didn't, a couple things I didn't touch on. And since we have the involvement of the Sun and Pluto and Venus retrograde in Capricorn, I think and Mars is going to move into Capricorn as well. I'm not sure, I can't remember when that's happening. Just let me have a quick look here. Yeah, on the 24th of January, right? So just the day before Mercury moves back into Capricorn in its retrograde phase. So, there's a lot going on in Capricorn yet again. So I want to just speak to this. So if you didn't read what I wrote last week, I encourage you to go and look for that. You'll see the picture that says, there's a picture of like a goat by the seaside, actually. And you can check it out on Instagram or on Facebook, and you can read what I wrote there. But I want to add to that a little bit. So Capricorn is a yin, also a yin, cardinal earth sign, right? Cancer and Capricorn are both cardinal signs, just like Aries and Libra. They are also cardinal signs. Those are the other two cardinal signs. And so again, it's an initiator, right? Cardinal signs initiate. They inspire. They have that impulse to begin things. And so Capricorn initiates. What does Capricorn initiate? It initiates long-range plans that will sustain us, into the future. And it does this through sort of hands-on work and patient determination. The symbol of Capricorn is the sea goat, not the mountain goat, right? I mean, we use the mountain goat. It's sort of like what a lot of people equate Capricorn with, and which is fine. It does fit. But the original symbol for Capricorn was the sea goat. That's what the constellation of Capricorn looks like in the sky. So the ancients knew it as the sea goat. And the sea goat was a mythical creature. originating actually way back to ancient Mesopotamia, right? Which is modern day Iraq, that area of the world. And the sea goat, you know, they knew, they called it the goat fish. And the symbol, like it symbolized one of their gods called Enki. And Enki was connected to both the water and the earth element, and known as the father of mankind. And in the myth, which you can look up yourself, right? Enki creates the first human out of clay. So there is that connection there to the earth element and making something, right? Creating something that is long lasting, and that kind of goes on and is connected to the material earthly plane. So there's that myth, but there's also in the Greek myth, the first sea goat was called Pricus or Precus. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. And Precus was an immortal sea goat, and was the ruler of time. Precus was created by Kronos, right? Saturn. And according to legend, all the sea goats eventually made their way to land and turned into the mountain goats that we know today. So because what happened was, I'll just give you the little short version. There, you know, Precus was the first, and then all of Precus's baby sea goats were very curious about the land, about the material world, right? So wanted to come out, always wanted to come out of the ocean and go on to the land. And Precus did not really approve and didn't like it, but couldn't really stop them. So that's the Cole's Notes version. And when I was pondering this, I'm thinking about this, you know, to me, it's like Capricorn and this notion of the sea goat, like sort of the tail in the waters, and then, you know, feet on land. It's the reminder of our connection to our beginnings, right? Capricorn is very connected to tradition in many ways, as is Cancer. And how we are sort of striving to reach the top of the mountain. When we're doing that, when we're, you know, chasing our ambitions and things, which Capricorn is very connected to, we can't forget where we came from. We can't forget our origins, right? There is a message here about, to me, about the struggle of being human and the challenge of moving towards the future with wisdom, with reverence for the earth, from, you know, from our origins, rather than just moving forward with blind ambition and chasing, you know, the next big thing and chasing the money and all of that. So I think this is something to hold in our awareness, you know, as we sort of move through this year and beyond. And there's this sense of evolution happening. Like, that's the other thing I wanted to say. Like, I feel like this idea of the sea goat, it's like, where have we come from and where are we going, right? Our evolution in this sort of physical, earthly realm. And I think that's something that more and more people are sort of tweaking to, and realizing that, you know, chasing our ambitions blindly, and power for power's sake, and you know, money for money's sake, and titles and accolades and all of that for the sake of it, what's the point, right? It reminds me, if you haven't seen the movie Don't Look Up, I suggest watching it. I know there are various opinions about it, but, you know, there's this notion of fiddling while Rome burns. And if we don't stop doing that, we're gonna, you know, we are going to regret it in the end. I'm just reminded of something that I heard, you know, it was part of the conversation between Chris Brennan and Richard Tarnas when I was watching the Pluto recording, and the reminder that, you know, Pluto was discovered around the time of the atomic bomb. And there's this sense of, like, I think it was Chris Brennan who said, like, for the first time, humans had the power to destroy themselves, right? Like, we created the power to destroy ourselves. Why would we do that? Because we could, right? The little sea goats coming out of the ocean, and then they were curious, and that's, yeah. So anyway, and so now what do we do with that? We wield that kind of power, and we're wielding it foolishly. So, you know, I think going back to the origins of the real meaning of the roots of Capricorn, it helps me anyways kind of wrap my head around all of that. But yeah, we need to stop fiddling while Rome burns, definitely. Okay, I feel like I'm rambling on and on and on, and so hopefully you're getting something out of this, and it's some food for thought. But let's get on with it and start taking it through the signs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through all 12 signs, and we're speaking first and foremost to whatever your rising sign is, or your ascendant sign. Those are essentially the same thing. I'm just going to put my sweater on here because I'm chilly. So if you don't know your rising sign, then listen definitely for your sun sign and your moon sign. But if you do know your rising sign, that should be the main focus in these general horoscopes, or any horoscopes that you're listening to or reading. But you can also listen for your sun and your moon. And particularly, you'll likely find that if you're somebody with a day chart, so, you know, if the sun was above the horizon when you were born, then the sun sign may resonate more. And if you're somebody with a night chart, meaning the sun was below the horizon when you were born, the moon may resonate more for you, right? But first and foremost, in any case, the rising sign or the ascendant. So, okay. So let's take it through the signs. I'm going to take it through each sign. I'm going to speak to the two houses. So the axis, right? The axis that this full moon is happening on for you. And you can get a sense of what transpired about 6 months ago. How is that coming to pass now? How is that reaching a sense of fulfillment, or there's an emotional catharsis piece happening, or there's like a leveling up, or a bearing of fruit, or a something coming to light or being illuminated, a revelation, so to speak, you know, that may have a very powerful catharsis moment, you know, associated with it. And when we're talking about Pluto. So, sorry, I think Mercury retro is scrambling my brain. Sure, let's use that as the excuse. Anyway, okay, so let's take it through the signs. I'm going to start with Cancer, because Cancer, this is your moon, right? This is your full moon. That is at 6:48 p.m. on January 17th, and that's Eastern time, at 27 degrees of Cancer. So actually, before I dive in, I don't know if I said this already. I'm just going to mention it for everyone here, that if you have, you know, your sun, your moon, your rising, like your ascendant, the angles, you know, so the descendant, which is opposite the ascendant, or the MC or the IC, top and bottom points of the chart. If you have, or any planets, you know, significant placements around 27 degrees of Cancer, give or take a few degrees. So, you know, to the end of Cancer, or like sort of 24 to 27 there. Or the other cardinal signs, Capricorn, Aries, and Libra. So I'm laughing because, you know, those of you who've been around here before know that my Saturn Venus conjunction in Aries is just getting hammered endlessly over the last couple of years. So yeah, once again, here we are for me anyway. So let's pay attention to that. Like I said, if you have planets or points around there, then you're likely to have a more personal experience with this full moon. But regardless, it's taking place in everybody's chart. And so it's speaking to the houses on the Cancer Capricorn axis. So here we are, beginning with Cancer. This full moon is hitting your 1st and 7th house axis. So the moon itself is sitting in your sign, right? And the moon rules your sign. So you're comfortable with this energy of the moon. The moon is comfortable in your sign. And if you think back, again, think back a couple weeks, what transpired at the new moon in Capricorn on January 2nd, around that time, you may be seeing elements of, you know, something sort of coming to pass that's related to that. Or if you go back 6 months to early July, around July 9th at the new moon in your sign, then you can see a connection here between what is reaching a point of, again, culmination or revelation or catharsis, or release, or those kinds of things, right? And that is in relation specifically to where the moon is sitting for you in your 1st house of self. So it's you. So it's on this axis of relationship, right? You is the 1st house versus the other in the 7th house. And when I say other, that can be a significant other in terms of like a, you know, a marriage partner, a life partner, a close personal friend or member of your family, or business associate, or a rival even. And the 7th house also speaks to our sort of contractual agreements and obligations. So there may be some element of that involved as well, right? And so, but ultimately, this is focused on you. So the 1st house is the how we interface with the world. So how we meet the world, right? And how we are perceived by other people, and how we put ourselves out there, how we present. The 1st house has very much to do with our physical body, our physical vitality. So sometimes there can be, like, you know, it speaks to health, but it also speaks to things like our appearance, and anything that we do to alter that. It can speak to our sort of a character, our personality, if you will. And the 1st house, when things transpire in the 1st house, they can affect everything else on the chart because it's about us, right? So this full moon can be a real point of emotional release for you in some way around your identity, your physical vitality, your, like, again, how you're perceived by the world, or how you sort of interface with the world, if you will, right? And there may be some relational kind of tension here, or catharsis, or revelation, or struggle even with, like, you know, some sort of, like, with the powers that be, so to speak, with authority. There can be some kind of power struggles that go on. There can be somebody who has this very Sun Pluto energy can come into your awareness or your experience in some way, shape, or form, right? And we talked a little bit about what that might look like. So Cancer, what I'm going to say to you is allow yourself to process whatever emotions may be coming up around this time, and try not to get into power struggles with other people. Um, you may really be, let's put it like, I have this sense of like, there may be a moment of like, where you are facing off with another person or a situation, and there's this sense of like protection, security, mama bear kind of situation that may come to pass, right? So um whatever it is, it involves you and another person or people, or some kind of like a contractual agreement, that kind of thing, that's going on for you ultimately. So that's for you, Cancer. I'm going to move on now to Gemini, where Gemini, you have this full moon transpiring in your second house. So the second house speaks to our finances. So, your personal finances, kind of like the money you make from your job or your skills and talents, your entrepreneurial ventures, whatever they may be, the money that you earn, in that way, to get your basic needs met. It can be about other resources like your time and energy, which you also have to expend to get needs met and that sort of thing. It can be about what you hold near and dear, like what you value, right? What do you place value on? So material possessions can come into play here, or your sense of self-worth even. So this is the second house, and then opposite the sky where the Sun and Pluto are sitting is your eighth house of other people's resources, other people's money, time, energy, the resources you share with a partner, or it can involve things like taxes, debt, insurance, loans, inheritance, bursaries, scholarships, these sorts of things. The eighth house can really speak to a sense of transformation. This word is so cliche these days, but if it works, it works, I guess, right? So the cycle of like death and rebirth, that notion of dealing with the skeletons in our closet, so to speak, right? So that we can, like, the eighth house can be where we can feel things are out of our hands, feel out of control. And so we go through this process of like, baptism by fire, so to speak. Like it's this phoenix rising energy, right? Where the phoenix has to burn out before it is reborn. The eighth house can speak to our intimate entanglements with other people, right? And when I say intimate, that doesn't just mean sexual. So it can be psychological. It can just be our entanglements, our complicated entanglements with others, right? But so that's where the Sun Pluto is. So we've got this tension between the second and the eighth house, between your resources and other people's resources, between your ability to get your basic needs met and the things that are out of your control. So think back, first of all, like I said, 2 weeks ago, you may have tweaked to something starting, initiating, that is now reaching a point of crescendo around this time. But moreover, 6 months ago, beginning of July, like July 9th, we had the new moon in Cancer, right? And so whatever transpired then, whatever was initiated then, is reaching a moment of catharsis now, a moment of revelation, if you will, of release, of potentially even crisis. Crisis doesn't always have to be bad though, right? So when something's really kind of grabbing our attention. So, you know, maybe, I don't know. Oh, goodness. I have a cat sleeping beside me and he's dreaming, obviously. Anyway, it could be that like something was initiated in early July for you that involved a new way of making money, for example. And now at this full moon, something around that is reaching a point of, fullness. And it might involve somehow a person who deals with other people's money, or you having to deal with other people's money, or, a person or institution that you have some kind of entanglement with. So, all right, I think enough said there, Gemini. I'm going to move on to Taurus now, where Taurus, you have this full moon happening in your third house. Your third house speaks to the immediate environment, right? So what do I mean by that? I mean, it's all those things that make up our daily lives. So not like the sixth house, but in a way where, it's sort of like, the actions, the communications you have on the day to day, the people you interact with on the day to day. So oftentimes we think of siblings, cousins, our peers, our teammates, people that are sort of on that level playing field to us. Also community members. We may think of any kind of communication that transpires and our style of communication, our thoughts, our self-talk, the third house this is the axis here of the mind, right? The third house, ninth house. And it's the axis of what's sort of close to home versus what's farther away. So it can also speak to things that involve schooling, teaching, learning, these sorts of things, right? This axis speaks to publishing, writing. Third house can be even about things like commerce, sales, marketing, short commutes, the familiar things that we do on the day to day, that we think about, that we perceive, versus the ninth house, which is where the Sun and Pluto is sitting for you, which speaks to the far away, foreign people and places, things we learn through experiences and people that are different from us. It's about expanding our horizons in the ninth house in some way, shape, or form. It can be about foreign travel, these kinds of things. And so there is an element of, an interplay here going on between what's close to home, what's far away, things having to do with education, teaching, learning, can be involved here. So the full moon itself in your third house is something coming to pass that was initiated either a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Capricorn, or about 6 months ago at the new moon in Cancer, which took place in the same part of the sky here. And so this can be, something that like some sort of maybe, let's say you were beginning some kind of a teaching gig, and maybe it's coming to a close at this time. Or there was something that was initiated that had to do with a piece of technology. That can also be the third house, or a vehicle. And now at this point, 6 months later, there is a revelation around that, or a realization, or an illumination, or something's bearing fruit, from that. Or there could be something going on in the life of a sibling, or a close, or a cousin, or something like that as well. And those sorts of relations. This can be like that Pluto Sun piece in the ninth house. I get the sense, like in this case, this could be like a powerful teacher who has that Sun Pluto quality that comes into your experience, and there may be like a relational aspect here. There may be a revelation around that in some way. So I think enough said there, Taurus. I'm rambling a bit here. So, like I said, it's been a hot minute, kind of getting back on the horse. But I think that gives you enough to go on if you think about that third, ninth house axis and what it's this full moon is lighting up for you. So next we've got Aries. Aries, for you, this full moon is happening in your fourth house. So this is a place that speaks to themes of home and family and roots and your ancestry, and the legacy that you have been left by your ancestors. It is about your sense of emotional security, the place that you live, housing, these sorts of things. And there is an opposition here between the moon in that house and the sun and Pluto in the 10th house of your public life, your career, your worldly ambitions, the legacy you wish to leave, your connection to authority and authority figures, right? This, in some ways, this can be considered the axis of parenting. But it's also this axis of like private life, which is the fourth house, versus public life, which is the 10th house, right? Sometimes we think of it as our career life in the 10th house versus our home life in the fourth house. So it speaks to those sorts of themes. And the actual full moon is happening in your fourth house of like I said, home, family, all of those themes, right? So there can be quite an emotional catharsis happening here around these themes for you at this time. And this may involve something that, in earnest began a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Capricorn, and is now reaching a point of culmination. But in a bigger sense, something that probably got off the ground, even if you weren't necessarily fully aware of it at that time, but about 6 months ago, where we had that new moon in Cancer on July 9th, 2021. And so it's reaching, whatever that is reaching a point of culmination, right? Of revelation, of catharsis. And so there may be this just came into my mind. There may be, when I'm thinking about the Sun Pluto piece in Capricorn, in that very public house for you, I feel like there may be a reckoning of sorts or a revelation around a powerful authority figure for you, or some sort of more of a patriarchal figure, even though it doesn't necessarily have to be a man though, but or like a father type figure, or somebody in authority, or your own sense of like authority in your career life. This could even be like your emotional security and whatever's going on at home. There's a bit of a tension there going on between that and your very public sort of persona, which may be quite like sun. You may be recognized as a sort of sun. You may have your own sun Pluto moment very publicly, in some way, shape, or form, or there's such some kind of a tension there between somebody like that and whatever's going on at home for you. So yeah, family, parenting, emotional versus material security, home versus work life, this sort of thing. These are what's being, These are the themes that are being lit up at the time of this full moon for you, Aries. Okay, next we're moving on to Pisces now. Pisces, for you, we have the full moon happening in your 5th house. And your 5th house speaks to the things that bring you pleasure and joy, in life, the things you like to do just because they make you happy. It can be creative self-expression and creative projects and hobbies and special interests. It can be, the 5th house very much speaks to themes around children, whether they be your own children or other children in your life. And it can also speak to, a sense of playfulness in the 5th house rather. So this is opposite the 11th house, which is about, whereas the 5th house is about, your creations in the world, so to speak, that come from you and you shining your own light. The 11th house is about the group. It's about the collective. It's about collaborations. It is about friend groups. And sometimes it's about your kids' friends. It's about, if that pertains to you, it's about your supporters and your allies and the people that can help you get where you want to go in your hopes and dreams for the future. And so these are the two houses that are, in this push-pull at the time of this full moon. But the full moon itself is, lighting up the 5th house. So it very much speaks to those 5th house themes. So think about something that maybe transpired a couple of weeks ago, whatever you got an inkling of or was initiated around then, something around that is coming to pass now. But even, on a grander scale, if you think back 6 months to the new moon in Cancer that happened on July 9th, so around that time, what got off the ground, what came into your awareness as pertains to these 5th house themes. And now it's reaching this point of culmination, of catharsis, of revelation, perhaps. And this may be a time I can see, Pisces, where Pisces rising, where you've got the Sun Pluto energy in your 11th house, and it can be like, it can go a number of ways, but there can be like a powerful solar figure there who is an ally, who can help you in some way, who can support you in some way, or a group or an organization, or it can be, something is revealed about friendships, about supporters, allies, about your hopes and dreams for the future that, it may involve power struggles. It may involve something really profound even, right? We talked about what Sun Pluto could mean. And I mean, I just scratched the tip of the iceberg there. So but ultimately, this full moon is illuminating your 5th house, right? But it involves that 5th, 11th house axis of your sort of individual kind of contributions and joy and how you, have fun in life versus collaborations and the people that you connect with that can help you with that. And, sometimes, like I said, as a parent, I have noticed myself that oftentimes the 5th, 11th house can speak to your kids and their friends and what's going on with them as well. So, okay, that's for you, Pisces. I'm going to move to Aquarius now. Jabber here, nonstop. So Aquarius, for you, the full moon's illuminating your 6th house. And this is a place that speaks to themes of the hard work we do on the day-to-day. And that may be work that is compensated or not, unfortunately. But it can be just, it knows to the grindstone kind of energy in the 6th house, where it's like the hard labor that we do. And sometimes that's at our work. Sometimes that's at home. Sometimes that's, like it involves service to others in some way. And it also involves kind of our daily routine. like all those tasks, the checking off the ticky boxes tasks that we have to do every day, right? I like to refer to it as that. It can also speak to our sense of like it can speak to health and illness. Oftentimes our daily routine either helps or hinders that, right? Whether that's in our control or not. And so it can speak to that. It can also speak, sixth house also has a connection to pets. So that may be implicated for you as well. So for you, Aquarius, think about, and opposite that is the 12th house. So whereas the 6th house is this house of like order, the 12th house is more about like the chaos and the stepping away from the daily grind. And that may happen in a number of ways, you know, by choice, going on retreat or vacation, or it may happen because it involves some sort of, you know, like a retreat that happens because you're recovering from something, you're convalescing, you're recuperating, or you're spending a lot of time in some sort of institution, you know, that's kind of tucked away from the world, like a hospital or a prison or a rehab facility or something like that, for yourself or somebody else, right? The 12th house can be sort of our connections to the unseen, our dreams, our you know, our woo-woo experiences, if you will. It can be about secrets, and the things that we also kind of hide from ourselves, you know, and like what's buried in the unconscious, or our self-sabotaging behaviors, right? So sometimes you'll hear people say that, you know, addictions like can be a part of the 12th house, for example. But all of those themes. So essentially there is something very profound going on there right now, because the Sun and Pluto are together in the 12th house, opposing this full moon in Cancer in your 6th house. So this axis of health and wellness, in a sense, is lit up, right? And your physical health, and also your mental spiritual health can be implicated here, or that of others, right? It's the daily work, you know, so the grindstone, and how you retreat from that. It's order versus chaos, like I said. This is the 6th, 12th house axis. So for you, Aquarius, something transpired around a couple weeks ago, in relation to these themes, specifically, you know, that new moon that happened in Capricorn on January 2nd. So something's coming to pass, or reaching a point in the cycle where it's bearing fruit, or something's culminating, something's being revealed or illuminated. But if you think back 6 months to the July 9th new moon in Cancer, what transpired then? What were you starting to do? What were you initiating? What were you getting inklings of back then that relate to this Cancer house, right? So to the 6th house for you. And now, 6 months later, we're reaching a point where something may be revealed or illuminated, or there may be a big catharsis moment around whatever that is. So that is for you, Aquarius. I'm going to move to Capricorn now. Capricorn, for you, just like Cancer, this full moon is falling on the 7th first house axis, but it's the opposite, right? For you. So you've got the moon in your 7th house of the other, right? Of your close personal relationships, or your contracts and agreements. And then you've got the Sun-Pluto conjunction in your 1st house of self, of you, of your physical vitality, of your interface with the world, how you approach the world, how the world perceives you, you know, these sorts of things. And so Capricorn, for you, you know, I mean, when I look at this, I think like you may be dealing with an emotional situation with a partner. You may be dealing with some kind of like a big emotional release or catharsis that happens, you know, and like that doesn't have to be bad at all. That could be a good thing. But you know, you may be when we're talking about the Sun-Pluto conjunction in your sign, you may be that person who is, you know, the authority figure, the powerful solar figure. You may be the one who comes across as being quite magnetic, you know, intense, or there may be some sort of moment of intensity that you're experiencing, um, you know, personally, and maybe in relation to your physical being, you know, or your just like how you're perceived or how you approach the world. Like I was saying, things that happen in the first house are you know, quite important. The actual full moon though is in your seventh house of partner, of the other, right? So it could be something transpiring that has to do with your partner or close friend or family member, or like I said, a contract or agreement. So think back to what happened, you know, what was going on a couple weeks ago, for you, that relates to this seventh house theme of partnership, of contracts and agreements, and what's coming to pass now around that same issue. Or, you know, on a grander scale, if you look back 6 months to the new moon in Cancer in early July of 2021, what was initiated then, maybe by a partner or in the life of a partner, or in relation to some like contract or agreement, um, and now there's this full moon moment, right? This big emotional release, this big emotional catharsis, this major revelation, around that, of some description. So that's for you, Capricorn. I'm going to move to Sagittarius now, where we have the full moon happening in your 8th house, Sag. So for you, the moon is illuminating this house that speaks to other people's resources, other people's money, time, energy. Oftentimes we see themes of taxes, insurance, debts, loans, inheritance, scholarships, you know, these sorts of things, investments in the 8th house. We also see themes of your entanglements with other people, or, you know, other entities. So, you know, and when we, like, this is where this connection of the 8th house to like our deep psychological sort of wounding and healing, right? Like those things don't tend to happen in a vacuum. They happen because of our entanglements with other people, you know, or organizations, or you know, that kind of thing. So these are the themes, this area of the chart that speaks to all these themes. We had this sense of like transformation happening in the 8th house, right? Where, or alchemy happening in some way. The 8th house, like I was speaking to when I spoke to Gemini, who also has this on the same axis, but in reverse. It tends to be the things that are not really within our control in the 8th house, says the person who has many planets in the 8th house in her chart. So, you know, there can be this sense of like not being able to control what goes on in the 8th house. But it can be quite powerful, because like it builds resilience. It's that notion of like, it's where we learn acceptance and humility and, like I said, resilience. It is, and vulnerability, and great courage, you know, and where we learn to let go of what we can't control, ultimately, right, in the 8th house. And so for you, Sag, this is a full moon that's transpiring in that 8th house. So 8th house opposite the 2nd house of your personal resources, time, money, energy, your finances, you know, what you value and what you place in, you know, importance on, and your sense of self-worth. So for you, if you think back a couple of weeks, something got off the ground around the time of the new moon in Capricorn on January 2nd that may be related to whatever's happening now, whatever's coming to pass, whatever is culminating now, whatever's being released, or whatever revelation happens. And this is connected also to the new moon in Cancer 6 months ago on July 9th. So around that time, what were you getting inklings of? What seeds did you plant then? What did you intend then? Or what did you notice around that time that was starting to put down roots, shall we say, in that, 8th house for you? And now it's reaching a point of culmination and revelation. So, there may be, like, the Sun Pluto energy for you is happening in your 2nd house of your own personal resources and your own sense of self-worth and values. And so there may be like an opportunity here, that involves you, stepping up in some way. And you get to, like, there's something going on, like, that's quite profound that has to do with your personal resources. And there may be a person that you encounter that has this Sun Pluto energy, that somehow impacts those personal resources or your personal values or your sense of self-worth as well. So, okay, we're going to leave that there, Scorpio. Sorry, Sagittarius. I'm going to move on to Scorpio now. I'm losing my voice, sorry. So Scorpio, for you, this full moon is happening in your 9th house. This is a house that speaks to expanding your horizons, right? The 9th house is the place of expanding our horizons. It is about foreign people and places, people that are different from us, and the things we can learn from them, and from traveling to different places, or from armchair travel through books and movies and documentaries and experiences, and those sorts of things that are different from what we normally encounter on the day-to-day. Teachers, it can be us as the teacher. This usually involves like higher learning of some description when we're talking about teaching and learning, like at the college university level, or things that you're learning that are beyond the basics sort of thing. Again, like I said, can speak to like the expansion of our belief system, or the, a challenge to our belief system sometimes when we have 9th house transits, where we kind of reconsider our worldview based on new information. And there's a shift there, right? And so there's also the involvement of, in the case of this full moon, of the Sun, Pluto, and the 3rd house across the sky. So again, this is the axis of the mind. It's the axis of travel. It's the axis of, how we communicate with people. These sorts of themes are triggered here. And so there can be, there's a moment of culmination here, of release, of catharsis, of revelation, in the 9th house. And it can truly be like an major aha moment and shift in perspective, in some way here. And it relates somehow to what transpired, something that transpired a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Capricorn, or moreover 6 months ago at the new moon in Cancer in the same area of the chart around July 9th. So something that kind of got off the ground, something was initiated, something came into your awareness, something you intended, and now it's reaching this point of catharsis, of fullness, of revelation around something, of a fever pitch moment, so sometimes this has to do excuse me, with government too, and institutions like, you know, like I said, universities, colleges, even religious institutions sometimes, when we're talking about the ninth house. So, you know, think back, Scorpio, like I was saying to you, and there may be some kind of power struggle through communication with another person, or you know, like the one thing I'll caution here, because the Sun Pluto is in your third house of communication, among other things, is is to try to not come across in your communications as somebody who is um, like, don't get caught up in power dynamics and communicate when we're talking about communications, right? Um, or, you know, don't, there can be like a bit of intensity that goes on around communications right now. So just be mindful of that. Okay, so I'm going to move to Libra now. Libra, for you, this full moon is happening in your 10th house of your career ambitions, of your public life, of the legacy you wish to leave, of, you know, authority and authority figures. And it's in your relationship to your own authority. And it is opposing the Sun Pluto in your 4th house of home, family, roots, place of living, real estate, emotional security, ancestry, the legacy you have been left, sort of thing. So that's the axis this is happening on for you, Libra. And 2 weeks ago at the new moon in Capricorn, something transpired that is related to this full moon. Now you're reaching a point, like there's a point in that cycle where something is bearing fruit, coming to pass. There's a emotional release around it. These sorts of things. There's a full moon, you know, illumination moment kind of thing. Something's reaching ripeness, but all of those things apply even more so to something that began to transpire around 6 months ago at the new moon in Cancer on July 9th, around that time, where something, you know, you intended, or something came into your awareness that was, you know, something new, a new thought, a new idea, a new plan, new piece of information, you know, and now at this time, there is a point where that is ripening, where there may be some kind of revelation around whatever that was that was initiated back 6 months ago. And again, in relation to your public life, your career, the legacy you wish to leave. Parenting even can fall on this axis, like I've said before. Your material security versus your emotional security, right? Work life, home life. This work-life balance is kind of the axis of that as well. So there may be something transpiring there. So that's for you, Libra. I'm going to move to Virgo now. Virgo, for you, this full moon's happening in your 11th house. And so your 11th house speaks to the group. It speaks to your friends, your allies, your supporters, those organizations and associations that are part of your life, and very much about, you know, your hopes and dreams for the future. And as I've said before, 11th house sometimes has to do, it can sometimes, when there's an interaction between the 5th and the 11th house, right? So in your case, the moon is in your 11th house and the Sun Pluto conjunction is in the 5th house across the sky. Sometimes that's about our kids' friends. I've noticed that. But nevertheless, there's this full moon moment happening here, this moment of catharsis, of a big revelation, of something being illuminated, of something coming to ripeness, you know, all these full moon concepts in relation to the group, to your friends, your allies, your supporters, your hopes and dreams for the future, like I said. And that may be related to something that transpired a couple of weeks ago around the new moon in Capricorn. So there may be something happen then around these themes, right? This 11th, 5th house axis. But moreover, something that kind of first started to tweak in early July, around the July new moon in Cancer, July 9th. Whatever transpired then is reaching a moment now of being fully illuminated, of coming into full power, of reaching a a fever pitch, of being ripe and ready to be put out there, kind of thing. And this can involve some tension with the 5th house, because this is where Sun Pluto is, of kids and things involving children, your children or other people's children. It can have to do with your pleasure pursuits, what brings you joy, your creative sort of input and self-expression, creative projects, how you have fun in life, is all the 5th house. Your hobbies and special interests fall in here. So there may be some tension around these things around this time, and we're reaching this moment of catharsis, real revelation, and it can be quite profound because of the involvement of Pluto conjunct the Sun. So quite intense, quite profound. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm a Virgo rising myself, so I'm seeing inklings of what this is pointing to in my own life. So maybe you are too. Okay, and last but not least in this situation here, we've got Leo. Leo, for you, the full moon is culminating in your 12th house of rest, retreat, what goes on behind closed doors, of the more chaotic parts of life that aren't so structured, of things like your self-sabotaging behaviors and things that are potentially sort of buried in the subconscious, right? Of places of retreat. Like sometimes this is just about like a vacation that you go on, or a place of retreat, or like what I've noticed in my own chart is 12th house. Like sometimes it's about things like I had a lot of 12th house transits when I was in the hospital for the birth of both of my kids, for example. So the hospital is a 12th house place, right? You're kind of tucked away from the world. And there can be losses there. And so, like in that scenario, it would be the loss of, like of your old life, right? When you become a parent in some way, things change. It can be, I've also noticed that, like I had a major 12th house transit when we bought our camp, which is a retreat for us, right? So it's kind of weird. Like, sometimes people think the 12th house is all doom and gloom, and it's, I mean, there can be some tense moments there, definitely. It's not necessarily an easy place, but in my own experience, that all sort of depends on a number of factors. So the 12th house is retreat, rest, recuperation, all the things I mentioned before, places tucked away from the world, which can be things like hospitals, like I already mentioned, or other kind of facilities like that. It is your dream world and sort of the unseen forces, right? And then you've got, so the full moon is happening there, and then the Sun Pluto conjunction across the skies in your 6th house of health and health and illness, of your daily grind, your the work you do on the day to day. That's all, the checking off the ticky boxes work, and the nose to the grindstone work that you may or may not be compensated for. It's about how you are in service to others as well. And so there's an interplay here between these two houses, right, on this axis at the time of this full moon. Think back, if I haven't mentioned this to you yet, Leo, I'm losing track of what I said to who. But think back to a couple of weeks ago, what transpired, got off the ground, what was coming into your awareness around that 12th house energy. And now, you know, and also 6 months ago, more importantly, 6 months ago, there was something transpired at the new moon in Cancer. Some new energy came in to that 12th house. And, you know, it's a time now where we're reaching a point of culmination or revelation or bearing a fruit or something like that, right? In relation to those 12th house themes. So think about that and how that speaks to you. I mean, I've got, you know, my husband's a Leo rising, and he's been dealing with a sinus infection, which actually probably started before Christmas, but really got the better of him a couple of weeks ago, right? And now he's starting to feel better because he's got some antibiotics and stuff like that. Just like that, that's a small example, but you know, it could be, it doesn't always have to be a big, massive thing that happens. It really depends on how these things interact with your own chart, right? So I'm going to leave you with that. That's a plenty long enough video for my first one back in a long time. And I hope you are well, and please connect with me on Instagram and Facebook because I'm there more often. And hopefully I'll see you in a couple weeks time to discuss the next lunation, right? Which will be, let me just have a look here, which will be February 1st, I believe. Yeah, February 1st, we're going to have a new moon in Aquarius. So hopefully I'll be back to talk to you about that, but I'm kind of just going with the flow here in COVID land and seeing what transpires with school and various other things. Okay, be well, friends. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.